We have great competition, and the house that makes the best article at the most reasonable price should win. I want us to be that house. When William Hartley said those words, he meant it. During his lifetime, he established Hartley's as the leading brand of jam in the UK, a position it still proudly holds today. This is his London factory, where he employed some 2,000 people. In achieving his phenomenal business success, William Hartley was not motivated by selfish ambition. The purpose of his life, he said, was to serve the Lord every day to the best of my ability. His greatest joy was using his immense wealth to enrich the lives of others. People say to me, "You've been researching Christian giants of business. Isn't that a contradiction in terms? Surely the world of business and Christians inhabit different moral universes." This is not necessarily the case, but there are people who've built huge empires on Christian principles. They're intrigued. We're overlooking the town of Colne in Lancashire. This is where William Hartley was born in 1846 and where he grew up. At the time, Colne was a mill town at the heart of the cotton weaving industry. William's father John was a tinsmith and a local Methodist preacher. His mother Margaret ran a small grocery in the town. Sadly, he was the only one of their children to survive infancy. He was immensely grateful for his Christian upbringing. He said, "My parents and grandparents were godly people. I was always under the deepest religious impressions, and I never remember a time when I had not an earnest desire to be good." At 13, he became a full member of the Ebenezer Primitive Methodist Chapel in Colne. It was quite normal at the time William was growing up for children as young as 8 to be working 6.5 hours a day, 6 days a week in the cotton mills. However, John and Margaret denied themselves the extra income William could have brought into the household had they sent him out to work. Instead, they enrolled him in a local school providing an elementary education for working class children. At 13, he transferred here to Colne Grammar School. When he left school at 14, William started work in his mother's grocery. When a much larger grocery came on the market in Colne's main street and had much greater potential, he tried to persuade Margaret to buy it. She flatly refused, dismissing his idea as headstrong rashness. However, a fellow chapel member whose opinion she respected managed to convince her that William's idea was actually a very sensible one. In the end, she bought the shop and put William in charge of it. And so, at 16, he became a businessman. And it was quickly obvious that he was a very good one. Aware that there was no proper refrigeration at the time and that salt was used to preserve food, he astutely added a saltery to the business where people could buy ready salted food or have their own food salted. He saw a further opportunity for growth by offering local retailers a wholesale service. He regularly left his home before 5 a.m. to set off some 20 miles across the moors to other towns to call on customers for orders. He was often exhausted and sometimes earned nothing. But his resolution to keep that up, combined with his customers' trust in the reliability of his products, won him an ever-growing clientele. There was no brick dust in his cocoa. There was no ground rice in his sugar. and his weights and measures were always honest, unlike some of his unscrupulous competitors. As a result of his integrity, William's business flourished. In May 1846, with the security of his thriving business behind him, William, aged 20, married Martha Horsfield, who was 23. Martha was the daughter of a Colne grocer and the youngest of 13 children, quite a contrast to William, who grew up as an only child. They were to have a long and happy marriage. They were to have 8 daughters and 1 son. Martha proved to be the perfect wife for William. Like him, she had a deep Christian faith, and she supported him wholeheartedly in all his church and philanthropic activities. She had a sharp mind and often gave him wise and welcome advice in business matters. By the age of 25, William's business had grown to become one of the largest wholesale operations in Lancashire. But then, in an unexpected twist of circumstances, he headed in a life-changing new direction. His jam supplier had become unreliable, and William stopped doing business with him. But this left him in a difficult position. There was no other source of supply. Not wanting to disappoint his customers, he decided to make jam himself. And so, in the summer of 1871, with a workforce of 12, he produced his first 100 tons. He was determined that only the best quality would do. His jam would contain no dubious ingredients as found in the products of other manufacturers. There would be no turnips to boost the weight, no carrots to act as a substitute for sugar, and there would be no tiny chips of wood to look like seeds. He scrutinized the production process from start to finish to ensure the purity and cleanliness of his product. William's jam was an instant success. Within 3 years, demand so greatly exceeded supply that he needed a new factory. He decided to give up his wholesale business and find one. But where? He needed a locality in a fruit-growing area, close to the Liverpool sugar refineries and near to the River Mersey docks. Bootle ticked all these boxes, and he found a site here on the Leeds-Liverpool Canal. He told his family and friends about his plans, but their reaction shocked him. They accused him of excessive ambition and greed. He was deeply hurt and later wrote, "I never felt so alone." But he felt he had to go. In June 1874, William and Martha and their 4 daughters left Colne to live in Bootle. But within a year, things started to go seriously wrong. Their youngest daughter, Martha, died at their home here, aged just 19 months. And in the business sphere, there were crushing pressures. William had invested all his available capital in the construction of the new works, and there was nothing left to buy fruit and sugar. He was forced to take out an exorbitant 7-year loan, which consumed 75% of his available capital. Money was very tight. "Our first struggles were severe indeed," he later recalled. 3 years into their time in Bootle, he and Martha made a decision that seemed to defy all logic in view of the strain on their finances. William explains, "Probably the greatest event of my life occurred on January the 1st, 1877. On that day, my wife and I made a written vow that we would devote a definite share of our income for religious and humanitarian work." William said, "It marked the beginning of the real, deep, lasting and genuine happiness of my own Christian life. They resolved that the amount they would give would increase in accordance with their income. And however badly things went, they would never give less than 10%. William admitted it was not as easy as he thought it would be. He was shocked to find that his instinct as an entrepreneur was to make money, not give it away. He described his inner conflict in the following way. The lower self at once asserted its claim and said, "I have it and it's mine." But the higher self, if it was in full sympathy with the teaching of Jesus Christ, would rise above the temptation and be ready to share with others. Eventually, he was able to say, "The more we cultivate the Spirit of Jesus Christ, the easier the thing becomes. And what appeared to us quite impossible at the beginning becomes not only possible, but absolutely a joy." During his times of struggle, William never lost sight of his obligation to his customers. He wrote, "Our aim has always been to win the confidence of the public by making the best possible article and selling it at a fair price. And on that principle, our business has gone from strength to strength." Well before the 7 years of the loan were up, he was in a position to repay it, but the lender refused. The interest payments were much too attractive. Such was the reputation of Hartley's jam that demand soared, and an extension to the factory had to be built, and then another. Business boomed. Thanks to entrepreneurs such as William, the economy of Bootle grew and the town expanded. In 1895, this beautiful park was opened. As he vowed, William unhesitatingly shared his good fortune with others. He often gave massive sums unconditionally, but to discourage an over-reliance on handouts, he adopted the principle of challenge offers. He would donate a specified amount towards a particular target on condition that the balance was found through the collective efforts of others. After 12 years of continual growth in Bootle, there was no further room for expansion. William found a new site for a factory about 3 miles away in Aintree, directly next to a railway line. Here, he built one of the biggest jam-producing factories in the world. He had a permanent workforce of 800, which rose to 2,000 in the busy summer months. To ensure the quality of his jam, William personally sampled each boiling and inspected up to 1,000 jars a day. He wanted his customers to know they could trust his products, and so chose a lighthouse as his trademark, a Christian symbol of trust and safety. In the treatment of his employees, William said he always tried, quote, to carry out the teaching of Jesus Christ. His employees mattered to him. He always referred to them as my people, and he knew each one by name. Their working conditions were important. He always made sure the factory was well ventilated, and he served wholesome food at cost price in the dining hall. If he found that a task was too demanding, he would ask, what can be done to take the hardness out of this job? Never mind the cost. And when he once found he personally couldn't push a truck in the newly delivered batch, he said, scrap them. As women outnumbered men 4-1, he had all the tram lines in the factory laid out in gentle gradients so they could push the loaded trucks. and he had sunken pits made for them to stand in so they wouldn't have to bend when filling the jars with jam. He made the services of a doctor and nurse freely available, and he also provided a pension fund entirely at his own cost. In 1888, William built a garden village alongside his factory for his workers. He wanted them to have a pleasant and healthy living environment. The streets were tree-lined and named after ingredients used in jam making, such as Sugar Street, Spice Street. Each house had a front garden and running water, a luxury at the time. In spite of the superior quality of these homes, William did not charge high rent for them. He wanted to keep them as low as possible and did not want to make a profit. He soon after built a chapel for his workers nearby, where he himself worshipped with his family. William believed he had a moral obligation to share his wealth with those who helped him create it. And so in 1889, he introduced a profit-sharing scheme. Now, other manufacturers thought this was incredible. They wanted to know more. They thought there must be some commercial benefit in it. And they asked William how it worked. He explained to them, "Profit sharing is over and above a fair and just wage and is given not because I think it pays commercially, but because it seems to me right and doing as I would be done by." The inquirers lost all interest. The annual profit sharing was a joyful occasion, as much for William as it was for his employees. He told them, "Whatever pleasure it gives you to receive the profit sharing, I can say with perfect sincerity that it gives me equal pleasure to hand it to you." In addition to profit sharing, William also increased the wages of all his employees from time to time without being asked. He also introduced a benevolent fund for those in genuine distress. Business in the factory continued to boom. In 1890, William penetrated the American market for the first time. His products were well received and sales continued to grow. However, in spite of being asked several times, he refused to open a factory in the States because, he said, he could not personally supervise and guarantee the quality. William's strong social conscience led him to become involved in the temperance movement, the fight against drink and the social misery it caused. He was active in a number of local organisations dedicated to this aim, and he was vice president of the British Temperance League. He was also a member of the Liberal Party, which supported the temperance cause. Through these channels, he got to know members of the management committee of Everton, a football club based in Liverpool, which at the time played here at Anfield. When a crisis arose at the club in 1891, William became involved in it. The committee clashed with John Holding, their president and also owner of the ground. The trigger was the rental amount of the ground, but there was a deeper underlying cause. Holding was a brewer, and one of his pubs, the Sandon, was the club's headquarters. Furthermore, he was a prominent conservative which looked after the interests of brewers. Inevitably, this clash of values would lead to a breakdown. Holding expelled the committee from Anfield and decided he was going to continue Everton Football Club there without them. One of the committee, George Mann, appealed to the Football Association, the game's ruling body. He insisted that Holding had no right to the name Everton. His appeal was upheld. The Football Association ruled that Holding could run a club here at Anfield, but he would have to choose a different name. He chose Liverpool. Mann had already found a site for the exiled Everton club on which they could build a new ground. It was about a mile away across Stanley Park, but there was a serious problem. There was a shortfall of cash. William and 10 others came to the rescue. They pledged to supply this shortfall by forming a consortium. Williams was the first of the sponsors' names to be read out at a public gathering. His was the largest single amount pledged. The new ground, named Goodison Park, was opened in August 1892. For the part he played in making this possible, William is still heralded today as one of the saviours of Everton Football Club. To provide a counter-attraction to drink, William wanted to open a recreation centre that would be, he said, elevating and of a Christ-like character. He decided to fund it himself. And in 1896, the Aintree Institute was opened. It ran successfully as a recreation centre for over 100 years. It has a close association with the Beatles, who played there 52 times before the release of their first record. Another cause very close to William's heart was the fight against sickness and disease. In 1897, to mark the Diamond Jubilee of Queen Victoria, he built a cottage hospital here in Colne. When he laid the foundation stone, he referred in his address to the responsibility of wealthy people such as himself to help others. The teaching of Jesus Christ was that those who turned up at the top owed a great debt, and by a portion of their money, knowledge and time, they should redeem this debt for the benefit of those who were less endowed. 4 years later, he funded the building of a centre at Liverpool University, fully equipped with laboratories for research into the medicinal properties of plants. It was named the Hartley Botanical Institute in his honour. As a public benefactor known for his generosity, William received countless requests for help. He considered each one prayerfully, wanting to exercise sensitivity and judgment in the distribution of the Lord's money, as he called it. He did not see himself as the owner, but merely as the steward of the money he made. He felt that giving money in itself was not enough. He believed that he should also be actively involved with the causes he supported by attending relevant meetings and events. He also had a network of trusted friends whose task it was to inform him of cases of dire need. He never questioned his friends' judgment. He only ever asked if the amount they recommended was actually enough. William's generosity was accompanied by the continual growth of his company. As the reputation of his jam spread throughout the country and demand escalated, he opened a second factory here in London in 1901. At the opening ceremony, he said to reporters, "The supreme object will be to turn out the purest and best article which the most advanced science and art of preserve making can command. Hartley's makes only one quality, the best." Incredibly, William made little use of advertising in achieving his success. When a new salesman wrote to him asking for a sample of the company's products to display, he confidently replied, "Dear sir, the name is the sample." Now, this wasn't arrogance, it was an accepted fact that Hartley's did indeed make the best. A number of major honours came William's way in the course of his lifetime. In 1908, he was knighted by King Edward VII in recognition of the many princely acts of beneficence and philanthropy rendered by Sir William to his country. He was the first person in Colne to receive a knighthood. In 1909, he was honoured here too when he was made a freeman of the borough in recognition of his gift of the cottage hospital and of the Hartley homes, a complex of almshouses for the elderly. The presentation was made to him by the mayor at a banquet here at the town hall. That same year, he was elected unanimously to the highest position a layman could hold in the primitive Methodist Church, President of the Conference. That same year, he funded the building and equipping of a new hospital here in Cologne because the cottage hospital had become too small. It was named the Hartley Hospital. In his address to the 10,000 present, when he laid the foundation stone, he promised, "Everything known to medical science will be provided in it. Nothing will be left undone to make it complete and up to date in every particular." In 1912, a tragedy occurred that plunged Cologne into grief. On the 15th of April, the Titanic, on its maiden voyage across the Atlantic, sank after hitting an iceberg. Among the 1,517 dead was a native of Cologne, 33-year-old Wallace Hartley. Although William was not related to Wallace, he, along with the people of Cologne, felt a deep sense of personal loss. He was one of us. Wallace, a devout Christian and an excellent violinist, was the leader of the 8-member band on the ship. When he realized the Titanic was sinking, he assembled his fellow musicians and they started to play cheerful tunes on deck to calm and comfort the passengers. They played continuously for 2 hours until the very end. When the ship began to tilt for its final descent, Wallace thanked his fellow musicians and released them from duty. As they walked away, he struck up the opening notes of the hymn, "Nearer, My God, to Thee." They turned back and joined him. Moments later, they were washed away and drowned. The story of the band's bravery in the face of death inspired newspaper headlines worldwide. "Nearer, My God, to Thee" was played at the funerals and memorial services of many of those who died in the tragedy. 10 days after the sinking, Wallace's body was recovered by a search vessel. He was brought home to Cologne for burial. His funeral became the focus of national grief and international attention. Well before the funeral, Cologne Town Council had decided to launch an appeal for funds to erect a memorial to him. William immediately made a challenge offer, which was announced in the Times. Sir W.P. Hartley, who is a native of Cologne, has promised to contribute a sum equal to 10% of the total amount subscribed towards the town's memorial to the bandmaster. The funds were duly raised, and this memorial was erected in honour of Wallace Hartley. Two years after the Titanic tragedy, the First World War broke out. Almost immediately, David Lloyd George, the Chancellor of the Exchequer, formed a small group of the best business minds in the country to advise him on crucial financial matters. William was one of them. But not even the best business minds could escape the devastating impact of the war. William felt its effects sharply. Sugar and fruit supplies were drastically reduced, and there was a severe labour shortage because of enlistment in the armed forces. But in spite of all this, Hartley's jam maintained its pre-war quality and prices were not raised. William stated, "We were resolved, I was very firm on it myself, not to make profit out of national necessities." But the financial climate did not put a brake on William's philanthropic work. He gave generous donations to hospitals and bodies such as the Red Cross. He also gave financial support to families of any of his employees who were serving in the armed forces. Martha actually personally took envelopes to them with money. The strain of the war years had a damaging effect on William's health. By 1919, he was suffering frequent angina attacks. That year, he was offered the position of Mayor of Cologne, but obviously, on health grounds, had to decline. In view of his poor health, it was decided to leave his grand house here in Lord Street, Southport, the family home for the previous 15 years, and move to another part of the town where the house was more manageable. Thankfully, his son-in-law offered to help out running the factory in Aintree, and this allowed William more time to devote to his philanthropic work. In 1921, he donated a site for the Liverpool Maternity Hospital and gave a huge sum of money towards the cost of building it. In 1922, his health problems caught up with him. When he went to bed on the 24th of October, he told his daughter Christiana, who was running the household, that he was feeling unwell. She checked on him 3 times in the night, worried that he was failing. But when he woke in the morning, he told her he felt much better and in fact planned to go to visit his works in Aintree. But he never got there. As he got out of bed, he suffered a massive heart attack and died. He was 76. His funeral service took place 3 days later here at the Primitive Methodist Chapel, known locally as the Jam Chapel, because he'd built it. After the funeral, the procession made its way some 50 miles by road to Cologne for William's burial here in Trawden Methodist Cemetery in the hills overlooking the town. As the procession made its way through Cologne, the flag on the town hall was flown at half-mast. All the shops were shut and blinds were drawn as a mark of respect for a great and much-loved man. At the same time as the interment in the cemetery, a service was held at the Aintree Primitive Methodist Chapel, attended by many of William's grateful employees. His death had made national news. Congregations in churches and chapels all over the country paused respectfully to reflect on William's life and passing. How would William like to be remembered? Today, fame and fortune tend to define a person's worth. He would therefore be applauded for establishing a renowned brand that made him immensely wealthy. But he would instantly have dismissed fame and fortune as a measure of a person's value or as a guarantee of happiness. He made this perfectly clear. Thank God, happiness is from within, not from without. It is what a man is and not what a man has. He was careful to apply the standard of what a man is to himself. I am much exercised as to whether I am such a disciple of Jesus Christ that my work people, my business friends, my neighbours and my family can constantly see the Spirit of the Master in my actions. What was success as William saw it? Let him tell us in his own words. My last word must be that we followers of Jesus Christ must carry into our life His Spirit and teaching, and whatever we think Jesus Christ would have done had He been in our place, whether we are employers or employed, whether we are in business or out of business, that we are compelled to do. This is the secret of all true success, the consecration of ourselves to Him who loved us and laid down His life for us.